Have you ever wanted to play a game that looks like a John Woo movie? A game that feels like Max Payne in first person, in an environment not too far separated from your average office building or an abandoned house, combined with mostly well done horror mechanics? That game is F.E.A.R. A game from 2005 that we all have to take a look at in our lives, even if we have to download some fixes from a couple of shady sites before we can. Hi, but you can just simply call me Amazon. And I don't like horror games. I'm a huge scaredy cat when it comes to, well, getting scared. I distinctly remember getting jump scared by a Google clone so bad that I had to sleep with the light on for at least a month before the face blurred somewhat in my mind. After that, I knew that horror probably wasn't for me. I've tried to reconnect with the genre a couple of times. I finished Outlast, a full-on horror game, and I've watched a couple of horror/horror adjacent things here and there. I really liked the movie The Shining, although that probably doesn't count. Most recently I played the Doom WoD called My House, before quitting it when dying to a big dog. All of this drives home the point that I don't get much horror in my life, and I'm happy about that. What I'm happy about too then is that F.E.A.R. really didn't scare me all that much, at first. It tries to jump scare you a couple of times in the beginning, to lure you into a false sense of security. You'll start to think that the game only uses cheap cutaways and jump scares. But let's save this talk for later. I want to get into the real reason this game is so great. The gameplay. F.E.A.R. plays like Half-Life in a lot of ways. Never to the same levels in its puzzles or freedom, but in the combat part of it, it surpasses it. The game, just like Half-Life, doesn't want to take your control away. It does this only a handful of times, most notably in select set pieces. This is a great thing, allowing you to miss certain scares, notice other details than what a more linear cinematic would, and it immerses you on another level. All this to say that F.E.A.R. is quite impressive in its use of gameplay, even outside of its action. What is also remarkable is the combat found in the game. A seemingly generic shooter at first expands with its loadout of weapons and with the introduction of Reflex, the slow motion button. I have always loved games that let you use slow motion to your advantage. A video about Max Payne and Superhot is basically guaranteed at this point, and F.E.A.R.'s implementation is above average. I call it above average because it only really serves as a way to make the combat simpler. But I also have to admit it makes you feel like a complete badass. The controls all feel great. Leaning around corners to spot enemies or to not get shot as easily is intuitive, and the weapons all feel responsive, outside of a few outliers. What made me a bit sad, however, is the wasted movement and melee mechanics. I really wanted to use the melee mechanics more. They look great and make you feel like a total badass, but the movement is so slow and the melee controls are so finicky that it makes using them a pretty bad time. I had to go out of my way, often tanking a bunch of damage in order to get a cool slow motion slide or roundhouse kick. If I could at least rush my enemies with a sprinting mechanic or faster movement in the slow motion mode, it would have been so much better. The guns present in the game all feel different, with my favorites being the sniper that turns your enemies into literal skeletons, the pistol that you can dual wield, and the nail gun type rifle. The nail gun is particularly great, nailing your enemies to the wall behind them. An awesome detail. But they're not all great. For example, I really didn't enjoy the SMG. That felt both weak and somehow unresponsive, maybe because it's a burst fire weapon for some reason. There are a couple of more guns here, but those were my standout favorites. There are a couple of different grenades in the game too, with the normal frag being my most used one, especially on tougher mini-bosses or bigger enemy encounters. One of the things that made F.E.A.R such a cult hit is the enemies present in the game. The AI of F.E.A.R is great even by today's measures, noticing your flashlight when it's dark, smoking you out of cover, or simply just communicating. This is all heightened by the awesome radio chatter in the game, realizing them outside of their samey looking exterior, humanizing their digital renditions. They are definitely not that smart though. They're smarter than your average Call of Duty multiplayer bot, but it's honestly nothing I would call more than great. Overall, the combat gameplay loop of F.E.A.R is intense and adrenaline fueled, pitting players against mostly human mercenaries, that in turn are heightened by the game's AI, as enemies display strategic behaviors and employ tactics to try to outwit players. By seamlessly blending elements of survival horror and first-person shooting, F.E.A.R offers a gameplay experience that keeps players engaged from start to finish, even if it does leave you wanting less horror and more shooting sometimes. While first-person shooters often emphasize fast-paced combat and intense action, this game proved that exploration can be just as captivating, if not more at times. Set in an eerie, paranormal-infested city, the game enjoys a dark and foreboding atmosphere that keeps players on edge throughout their journey. The environments are meticulously crafted, featuring dilapidated buildings, flickering lights, and a haunting soundscape that adds an extra layer of tension. These maps are superbly made, even when they look a bit dated. The exploration segments exist as a break from either a scary segment or combat, but also to allow you to find secrets and restock on medkits and ammo. The atmospheric design of F.E.A.R ensures players are constantly immersed in a nightmarish realm that amplifies the horror experience. The visuals overall are kind of amazing even today, with particle effects in slow motion gunfights looking outright amazing, solid lighting, and a crazy over-the-top blood system. This blood system paints a scene after a gunfight. Red walls, destroyed and filled with bullet holes and corpses nailed to a wall, charred skeletons, and debris litter the space. Explosions have a great looking shockwave and amazing particles that bring them to life, and the guns leave a noticeable trail in the air in slow motion to make them easier to dodge. This is probably when F.E.A.R looks its most interesting, in the fast-paced gunfights or right after them. But don't let that detract from the fact that this game looks more than okay outside of them too. Dark corners are more than just dark. Corridors are a nightmare to walk down, knowing there could be something right behind you, and the audio nicely ties it all together. One of the better aspects of F.E.A.R is its narrative. The premise is this. An army loses control over its cloned soldiers that are all controlled telepathically by someone called Paxton Fattel, one of the game's antagonists. You are the Point Man, a new recruit on the First Encounter Assault Recon, or simply F.E.A.R. The game focuses a lot on the mysterious and supernatural entity named Alma, a ghost girl with immense psychic powers, coming straight out of the movie The Ring. As the game progresses, players unravel the dark secrets surrounding Alma and the sinister experiments conducted on her. It's not an amazing story by any means, but it's complex and believable while not being hard to follow. Also, it's actually kind of scary a lot of the time. But again, I'm more easily scared than most. In the opening hours, I didn't like F.E.A.R all that much. I was kind of dreading completing it, but my Patreon subscribers picked it and I stuck with it. It only took another hour or so and I was somehow loving it instead. I noticed the cheap scares and the underwhelming nature of the first couple of enemy encounters, but it was quickly instead replaced by the well-made and supremely tense exploration and the frankly amazing gunfights. In conclusion, F.E.A.R has some seriously incredible moments, but few of them come in the form of set pieces or story beats. the AI enemies of F.E.A.R represent a significant milestone in video game design, showcasing a level of intelligence that was groundbreaking at the time of the game's release. Their advanced behaviors, communication, adaptability, and emphasis on realism transform enemy encounters into dynamic and very engaging experiences. This game thrives in its combat and exploration/moving through its levels. The atmosphere here is a masterclass in tension, with great lighting and an excellent soundscape to surround it all. But they should have given you more slow motion time and made the movement fast enough to use the awesome melee attacks. Overall, a seriously great game for almost any type of player. It is definitely worth the low price it almost always goes for, and actually probably more than that, considering it has 2 expansion-sized DLCs I have yet to play. A short romp coming in at about 6 or so hours, with some good horror, a load of lore to dig into, and some seriously awesome combat. Thanks for watching. This video was a last-minute addition to the poll, so of course it was picked. It's not the first time this has happened, and it will not be the last. My next big video is about Grand Theft Auto 4, of which I have finished playing and recording it, outside of the DLC, which I probably won't cover. Sorry if you wanted me to do that. The script for that video is about 10 minutes long, but that's because I'm having a hard time figuring out how it should be laid out. We've also reached 6 patrons. That's a lot, and it will help me improve the quality of my videos. Maybe it's time to buy a mic arm that doesn't randomly fall off, or sound like this. Again, thanks for watching, and I'll see you next month. Probably.